Good morning, church. I'm Eddie, and we're going to be in Job 42 today. What a blessing it is to be able to wrap up the book of Job with you guys. I really love this book. It's just an amazing picture of spiritual warfare. And what we see is that God allows Satan to tempt us sometimes. Even a man like Job that is considered blameless and upright. The Bible never explicitly tells us that we'll have a good life. In fact, it tells us the opposite. Jesus says in John 16:33 that we should expect trials and tribulations. We also see that Job's friends spent a lot of times deliberating why he's in this predicament, and all they ended up doing was causing him to lose his faith. In the last couple of chapters we went through, God intervenes and really gives Job a tongue lashing and really humbles him. As we pick up in chapter 42, this is Job's response, and it starts out like this. Then Job answered the Lord and said, I know that you can do everything, and that no purpose of yours can be withheld from you. You asked, who is this who hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore I have uttered what I do not understand, things too wonderful for me which I did not know. Listen, please, and let me speak. You said, I will question you, and you shall answer me. I have heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now but now my eyes see you. Therefore I abhor myself, and I repent in dust and ashes. So he's repenting. And what's he repenting of at this point? I mean, what did he do wrong? Well, if we go back and we look, we can see that at one point he puts a terrible curse on the day of his birth. He just desires to die. And ultimately he's challenging God. And this is essentially the definition of spiritual warfare. Spiritual warfare is basically when Satan causes you to doubt God's sovereignty over your life. And his friends really didn't help in this situation at all. If you pick up in verse 7 through 9, you actually see that God confronts his friends and causes them to repent as well, and tells them to go give sacrifices to Job. And so what was their sin in all this, basically, was they caused Job to stumble. And if we look at Romans chapter 14, verse 13, it says this, Therefore, let us not judge one another anymore, but rather resolve this, not to put a stumbling block or to cause to fall in our brother's way. So they essentially just caused the stumbling block for Job. All their questioning, all their judging. And this shows us that, when someone is going through a hard time, we shouldn't be quick to just judge them. We should encourage them. And we should show them that, they shouldn't lose faith in God, but they should turn to God and put their faith in him. And as we finish out the chapter, we see that the Lord's going to restore Job's life. And it starts looking here on verse 10. It says, And the Lord restored Job's losses when he prayed for his friends. Indeed, the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Then all his brothers and all his sisters and all those who had been his acquaintances before came to him and ate food with him in his house, and they consoled him and comforted him for all the adversity that the Lord had brought upon him. Each one gave him a piece of silver and each a ring of gold. Now the Lord blessed the Lord in the latter days, and Job had more than his beginnings, for he had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 female donkeys. And so what you see here is what should have been done at the beginning. Is you see his sisters and his brothers, and they all came together, and they actually comforted him. They showed him some love, even though after going through all of this predicament. And then we see here in verse 13, it says he also had 7 sons and 3 daughters, which is interesting because if you look back in chapter 1, he had 7 sons and 3 daughters before. So that doesn't really add up when you think about, the Lord restoring twice what he had before. But if you read here in chapter 1, verse 5, You read, it says, "So it was, when the days of feasting had run their course, that Job could send and sanctify them. And he had raised early in the morning and offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, It may be that my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. Thus Job did regularly." So what does this show us? This shows us that Job was a man that was aware of what sin did and what that does, and that separates you from the Lord. And he set this example for his children. It said that he did this daily. He did it regularly, and he was trying to sanctify them. And so by raising his children in this way, we can assume that his children had the same knowledge. They had this idea that sin separates them from God, and they need to repent from that sin. So with that knowledge, we can assume that maybe his first 10 children are with the Lord. And so there's no need to actually double that, because those kids aren't dead. They're just in a new place. They're with the Lord. And so now, and then here at the end, we see after this, Job lived 140 years, and saw his children and grandchildren for 4 generations. So Job died old and full of days. And I love how Charles Spurgeon wraps up his thoughts on the book of Job. He says this: "We are not all like Job, but we all have Job's God. Though we have neither risen to Job's wealth, nor will probably ever sink to Job's poverty, yet there is the same God above us if we be high, and the same God with his high everlasting arms beneath us if we be brought low. And what the Lord did for Job, he will do for us, not precisely in the same form, but in the same spirit and with like design." So my prayer for you today, guys, is that you never lose faith, that even in the darkest days, you won't lose hope. And remember that God's got you, and he'll see you through it. I love you guys. Have a great day.